Oh no.
So the recording starting again, take two. Hello everyone, welcome. We're excited to have Stephanie Jean-Baptiste, soon-to-be doctor in sociology at Loyola University of Chicago, where she's writing a dissertation on the subject that she's presenting today. She is talking about the local perceptions of NGOs in Port-Salut, Haiti. So Stephanie is a unique researcher who has the passion for doing good in the world and really sharp ethnographic analysis. She brings all kinds of unique perspectives to the study as a sociologist. And as someone who comes from Haiti, she became a U.S. citizen during this process of getting her doctorate. She was doing a very unique study of how NGOs are thought of as reverse migrants, because literatures on migration often think of people as going from places like Haiti or Mexico to places like the United States. So very rarely do we get to see the ways that people understand how people are when they migrate from places like the United States to places like Haiti. So this is sort of a reverse migration. We don't think of them in terms of migration. We think of them in terms of expatriates. There's some really great work done on expatria. Hinman comes to mind. But Stephanie's work is truly unique, and it truly starts with local people's perception of how NGOs are understood, how they're perceived, how they're received, and how they interact. So today we're going to be hearing about her doctoral research, covering the conditions that led to the strong presence of NGOs in Haiti, exploring how locals residing in Port-Salut, a seaside city, perceive NGOs as well as the representatives of NGOs. She pulls from post-colonial theories to frame findings and discuss just how much Haiti's colonial past still has an impact on how locals perceive this often fraught foreign aid presence. And so this is the second and final in the Real Talk and Big Ideas series. So everyone can give a warm welcome to Stephanie Jean-Baptiste.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for creating this space for this conversation. This is a very important topic to me. It's also, it has its challenges. So I really welcome any kind of feedback or commentary you may have, or any questions. You'd be surprised how far the right question can get you, and how much it can improve the work. So don't be too afraid to be critical. I welcome it. I welcome scholars or any individual who has an input about this subject in particular. So I'm going to begin by sharing my screen, and hopefully all is well. Hopefully it goes through without issue. Right here. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, I don't even know how to make this work though. Let's see. I got my notes right here. Right, okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Okay, well, thank you for joining me. I will be beginning right now. So the title is Upamun Boisit, which translates to "You are not a person who is from here." Local Haitians' imaginaries of NGOs and NGO representatives. At the beginning of this project, I was a graduate assistant, and I was collecting the data in Haiti, and it's in the process of collecting the data and having conversations that I really came up with my research question. I had an initial interest to look at whiteness as a point of analysis, but as us scholars know, the data tells us what the question is. Well, if you're looking at it from that perspective. So I'm gonna introduce everything and say we really began, this project began in 2019. So in the summer of 2019, there was a lot of political dissatisfaction, a lot of dissatisfaction in Haiti, because we had a big issue with what was happening to the Pico Caribe, the aid money, and the people were very dissatisfied because it seemed that the funds had been mismanaged or mishandled, or whatever had happened to the funds. It was not clear. It wasn't evident that they were used to benefit the population that they were meant to serve. Namely, the people who were the most affected either by the earthquake that took place in January 12th, 2010, or any other political or environmental issue that we might have experienced between then and 2019. So this project explores the local Haitian imaginaries of, one second, of course, my document closed on me. Give me one moment. I don't know what happened. I had it open, actually, you know what? Give me 1 second. The document closed. Maybe pause the recording while I find it. Okay. This project explores local Haitians' imaginary. It's closed again. Why is this happening to me? All right. This project explores the local Haitian imaginaries of non-governmental organizations and their representatives. This is an interdisciplinary project, and it draws upon the sociological and anthropological literature of organizations. I also dip into post-colonial theory, and I also look at some articles in Haitian studies. So because my work focuses on the imaginaries that locals have of NGOs and NGOs, as a reminder, NGO stands for non-governmental organization, and NGOR stands for representatives of non-governmental organization. I explore how my research provides additional insight into how a history of foreign intervention coupled with a unique historical circumstances that is the Haitian experience, can lead to a multitude of imaginaries of a particular foreign presence. I discuss the implication of these understandings. When it comes down to, the reality is when it comes down to the representation of Haiti in historical text or narratives, whether it be in the media or in academic journals, the focus is often to talk about Haiti as something to be observed. I make the political decision in this project to emphasize the voices of the subaltern and to emphasize as well scholars who come from places that have experienced colonization. So the subaltern in postcolonial theory refers to how we describe or define an individual that has experienced colonization or oppression. So with this project, what I'm essentially doing is, instead of putting the focus on how the West, or let's say the US, or let's say France or England, understands us who come from, places like Haiti and Jamaica, what I'm essentially doing is I'm reverting the gaze, and I'm now prioritizing and putting at the center of my analysis how locals are understanding the presence of foreigners. Guha, who places his work in Bengal, India, discusses how the biased perspective of colonial empires could not do justice to the truth of the lived experience of the marginalized. His work further emphasizes the importance of how the subaltern have resisted and continue to fight colonial rule in ways that are not visible, that are silenced by the colonial empire. It is also important to consider how different social classes within a subaltern society may have different perspectives or understandings. So this work essentially focuses on amplifying the voice of Haitian locals living in Port-Salut. It is important to note that Haiti has a unique class system in which you have members of the upper class occupying positions of power and oftentimes making decisions that do not benefit what I think Tuyo calls la populace, or the people. This project does something unique, I think, and it really prioritizes the voices of people living in rural Haiti. For context, so this is Haiti. Haiti is an island located in the Caribbean. It's between Cuba and Puerto Rico. And this is the capital, Port-au-Prince, and it's typically the area that we spent most of our time when we talk about Haiti. The main cities involved in analysis are typically Cap-Haïtien, right here, Port-au-Prince, and then obviously Okai. This project specifically, though, looks at Port-Salut, which is located on the south part of the island. And it is a coastal city, as you can see right here. And because of that, it also was subject to a lot of damages with Hurricane Matthew back in 2016, I believe. So when it comes down to the representation of Haiti and historic text or narratives, whether it be in the media or in academic journals, like I said, the focus is on Haiti as something to be observed. So my work contributes to subaltern studies because our respondents are primarily a part of the classe paysanne in Haiti, which is the class of laborers, like the individuals who typically are responsible for taking care of the land, who tend to the ground, and who really are the foundation of Haitian society, but whose needs unfortunately are very rarely prioritized or met because of this colonial legacy. So colonial societies experienced a structuring of social classes that differs from those that develop in empirical nations. So a brief history of Haiti here. Haiti was a colony of France, and it gained its independence in 1804 via the Haitian Revolution. Unfortunately, this approach to their freedom led to mass resistance from the then French government, and they imposed on Haiti a debt of 17 million francs, which took Haiti forever to pay off, and really set up Haiti to be at an economic disadvantage from the moment that it was born as a nation. In doing so as well, this economic disadvantage had a very big impact on the infrastructure of the country, with very little financial resources, issues such as, health issues, environmental infrastructures, such as building roads, educational system, all of these aspects that make a functioning state could not be attended to, and so the Haitian government was not able to really show up for its population, and as a consequence of that, you have a lot of political issues that would lead to the presidency of Papa Doc, François Duvalier, which then would lead to foreign intervention from the United States, as well as an increase in aid distribution in the form of the presence of NGOs in the island. The presence of NGOs would also increase around 2004 during the end of the presidency of Jean-Baptiste, and a series of political issues would guarantee this continued influx of NGOs and NGOs, which brings me to ask the question, with such a strong presence of NGOs and NGOs in Haiti, how are the locals dealing with this presence? How are they interacting with NGOs? And it really wasn't until the work of Dr. Schuler that, I really hadn't seen, at least in my personal experience and exposure, any work that highlighted the perspectives of locals on the ground. So, as I've unpacked it, colonial societies experience a structuring of social classes that differ from those that exist in imperial nations. And so it becomes difficult to use theoretical framework that explain a social phenomenon present in some imperial nations to explain that same phenomenon happening within a colonial society. it's difficult to use a European model of class analysis to explain what is happening in a country like Haiti. And much like what has happened in India, where the Indian nation state defined and controlled the political sphere by excluding subaltern classes, Haiti too has a history where its upper classes leave out the interest of the inferior class or the class paysan. The political space in colonial societies has more autonomy because of the structure, and it can lead individuals to rely on resources outside of the state's infrastructure to navigate their needs, which is where the NGOs really come in. Just confirming that when you refer to NGOs, you're referring to international NGOs, yes. When I'm referring to NGOs, I'm referring to non-governmental organizations, which can be international or local. The reality is that it's very difficult to make the distinction on the ground between an INGO or an NGO from the perspective of a local. But that is a very good question. And I think also a distinction that I should be making in my introduction for sure. So yeah, thank you for that question, Natalie. Let's see. So the inevitable question in the literature of postcoloniality is whether the subaltern can have a voice. So you have Spivak, who discusses how instrumental the absence of representation of subaltern voices can be to the power imbalances that silence them from getting their needs met. I think there's another point. Thank you for, oh no, you're fine. Let's see. So I respond to this call to increase the presence and representation of subaltern voices, especially on matters that relate to their experience with colonial or post-colonial entities. So this brings me to the question, what are locals' imaginaries of NGOs? What are the typologies of the term NGOs in the Haitian understanding? How do they perceive NGOs and NGOs? How does the relationship with the state inform this decision? When I first began this project, I had framed NGO representative as migrants because they were behaving like migrants. They, like, if I were to analyze them, if I were to use the same language that Europeans use when they describe people who come from the global South to come to the developed North to find access to work opportunities, that's what we would, traditionally refer to as a labor migrant. However, when we're looking at the reverse flow of migration, when you have people from the global North coming to the global South, we don't call them immigrants at all. We don't even put that in that. They're not categorized the same at all. Instead, we call them expatriates. Now, of course, this is a different type of people. They're moving south to perform aid to help the country, and their payment is not even coming from the country of destination. Their payment comes from the host country, like the imperial nation, let's say the United States. So to give a better example, let's say that if you come from the United States and you're going to provide aid in Haiti, your payment is going to be coming from the United States, at least from my understanding. And if I'm wrong about that, absolutely, please feel free to bring it up and I will correct this understanding if it is wrong. So my work more strongly influenced by the work of Parvati Raghuram, who invites us to challenge our Eurocentric view of mobility in countries with a history of colonization. Oh, it's not touch screen. So this is particularly important because the subaltern is much more than an entity onto which an action is happening. And that is something that I feel very strongly about. You often hear the term of the passive voice when you talk about people who experience oppression. We are oftentimes oppressed instead of naming the people committing the action. are we oppressed, or did, for example, the United States government, pass policies that put us in a position of experiencing oppression? So we are more than our oppression. We have identity, we have our intellect, we have our culture, we have an experience of the world that if scholars would begin to consider, we probably would have a better understanding of the social processes that are taking place. The subaltern, the colonized, individuals who have survived the systematic colonization of their people and are continuing to face the effects of this colonization in present times are also actively resisting and fighting against their oppression. We can better understand these forms of resistance and of survival by inviting them to share their experiences. Subaltern life is complex, and it is important to consider how identity intersects with culture and power in the context of colonial and post-colonial societies. As a rule, as Said argues, the ways we understand the realities of what Spivak would call the subaltern, it is deeply tainted by colonial Eurocentric ideologies on race. In general, those ideologies are based on an understanding that geographical location can often be a justification for colonial activity. So given that Haiti has this past of colonial activity, given that Haiti, was colonized by, a country that believes in white supremacy and in the superiority of the white race, which in parentheses, we know is a social invention. How is it that individuals living in Haiti who have where Haiti has had a history of political and environmental issues, where Haitians have, seen the influx of a group of aid migrants to help them, allegedly, to help them process to help them address the issues, the systemic issues that they're experiencing because of the absence of the state and the incapacity of the state to provide for its people. How are they understanding this presence? How do they understand an NGO? And how do they understand their own Haitianness in relation to the presence of this NGO? What, to kind of piggyback off of Schuler's work, what are the social cultural consequences of the presence of NGOs in Haiti beyond aid distribution? So my work is I want to challenge this Eurocentric understanding of mobility and of understanding race and identity. Though postcolonial theory work emphasizes how colonization has shaped contemporary migration patterns, it does not explore the relationship between the subaltern and agents of aid distribution. And though my work also doesn't necessarily look at the relationship of the interaction with NGOs, it does, however, provide some hints of how locals understand this presence, which might give us some insight on why aid relations in Haiti never lead to an increase in development. My work also gives insight into the complexities of diasporic identities in the context of Haiti. I provide this insight by drawing from the work of Apia and Baba, who explore how the post-colonial world is a space of hybridity where individuals embody cultures from different geographical locations. While the subaltern embodies the culture of the impure nation, as well as the culture of the social class she belongs to within the subaltern society. So we've covered that. So what happens on the ground? So you have this post-colonial background, and you also have the reality that when NGOs get to Haiti, they kind of experience this increase in economic and social capital. Now, this is something that is present in the literature of migration, where we talk about individuals who engage in what I refer to as north-south migration. When they get to the South, they have more social capital, more economic capital. They separate themselves from locals because they feel like, they believe in the hierarchy of, their culture, of Eurocentrism. And you also have, they're received in a way that is neutral to welcoming. And this specific example This was citing people in Mexico specifically. So it's very different from how foreigners who come from the underdeveloped South who come to the US or UK experience. In those cases, they experience a downward, they did downward social capital, downward economic capital. They're definitely still separated from locals, but they're excluded from they're excluded. Whereas in the case of people who go to the global South, they exclude themselves. So it's a very different dynamic. And you know, we know about immigrant attitudes in the US. It really varies. It really varies. So NGOs are seen as a non-professionalized society group and as serving a function at international and national levels. So it's one thing that has been very difficult. So, right, okay, so I define, just to be clear again, I define NGO representative as a person who works for an NGO to help the organization meet its goals. And this project, I propose framing NGOs as quasi-permanent migratory group and investigating how locals perceive NGOs. Now, this is important because we have a hard time assessing how many NGOs are in Haiti. It's a real challenge. Like if you look it up right now, you might find something generic, like there are between 10,000 to 20,000 NGOs in Haiti, but it's incredibly difficult to track them because of the way that the state at the infrastructural level, the state has a lot of work to do, and there's really no real way or no legal way to implement that they follow the rules and report to the state that, you know, there's an NGO here. Because of that, if you cannot track the NGOs, you cannot track the NGOs. If you do not know how many NGOs there are, how are you going to know how many NGO representatives there are? And that has a lot to do with ease of access into the country. And this is, again, a legacy of colonial times. With an American passport, you can go to Haiti and without needing a visa and just pay a $10 entry fee at the door. I'm not sure if that amount has changed, but the reality is the way that colonization is set up, it's so easy to enter Haiti that it's very difficult to track NGOs. So if we can't track them, how do Haitians know that they're looking at an NGO representative? How do they know? So going back to my research question, in order to collect the data, we initially were interested in only looking at NGOs, but again, as I conducted the research, as I conducted the interview, so much more came up. We did snowball sampling and we had survey questions. We had 91 questions, I believe, and we interviewed about 100%, we interviewed 100 participants. So the findings were as followed. When we asked them what an NGO was, as you can see, so just to clarify, we asked them 3 times. Can you give me 3 words that can help me describe what an NGO is? And a lot of them said they had no idea. 41% said 40.6 said that they had no idea, never seen. Some people said they're just an activity. It means an activity is going to come to the area. Some people said, you know, NGOs are people, or NGOs are organizations, or and we asked them again, and as you can see, like the answer, they ran out of answers to give to us. One moment. There you go. But one thing that really caught my attention, and again, why the post-colonial approach is so important in understanding and framing the reality of NGOs in Haiti, is that they saw NGOs as blanc or white, or étranger, which means foreigner. So a lot of times oftentimes you'd have people use interchangeably the term ONG with blanc, which means white. And they kind of, And whiteness in Haiti is an incredibly interesting identity that can take many forms. I don't know if you've heard that, if you have, I've heard, I don't know how else to frame it, but as a person, if you have money in Haiti, sometimes they might refer you as blanc. So a lot of times whiteness is not exclusively about skin color, and it can also be about how much money you have. So it's almost as if they understand a person who is an NGO as having resources or as simply being white. Um, and unfortunately, the post-colonial legacy would be that their experiences of whiteness is that white people tend to have resources. So if you're a person who comes to Haiti and has resources, it is possible that you might be labeled as an NGO, even though you're not. Or if you come to Haiti as a person who is white presenting, in the context of Haiti, they, racialize you as white, they might assume that you are automatically a foreigner or automatically have money or automatically an NGO. And that was really like the crux of my interest. Like, how do they decide who's an NGO? How do they decide who's a foreigner? And that becomes complex because of, again, the colonial history, the reality that for a lot of Haitians, the only time they see a white individual is when that white person is in a position of power. When they see a white individual is when they are around in the area cleaning up, building something. So the assumption, the association begins to form. So I wondered, maybe is it that they were exposed to NGOs? Like, how would they know what an NGO was? And the statistics were, have you seen NGOs working in the area in the past? 29 said yes. That's not a strong percentage. Do you see NGOs working now? 26 said yes. Have you had the opportunity to meet with a representative of this NGO? Only 18 said yes. Should NGOs stay in the area? 63 said yes. And to me, it was complicated because I wondered, why would you say that they should stay if you've never seen one in the past, if you've never seen one currently, and you've never met one? What is the criteria according to which you're like, absolutely, you can stay? And unfortunately, I didn't really find much of, well, the results would reveal themselves later in the data, and I will be covering this. So a lot of people would say, not a lot of people, there was a category of people who specifically said, you know what, qui dit étranger dit aide. If you say foreigner, that means aid is coming. NGOs as white people who provide aid. So if you have an understanding and an imaginary of an NGO as a white person who's going to provide aid, it then makes sense that you have 60%, about 60% saying, absolutely, they can stay even though I never met them, even though I don't even see them doing work. That makes sense to me that they stay, because what I know of them is that they are here to provide aid, even though I have not necessarily seen evidence of that myself. So, so these are a few experts of what people have shared. C'est blanc seulement qui aide nous, la qui barre la pliant pour nous, autorité locale pas fin. So this says, only white people help us here. They helped us find shelter from the rain. The local authorities do nothing. Gen de blanc qui bay tol, qui couvri kaila. There are white people who gave us material to cover the house. Yo pa palavo ou te mette se souvle, mais yo pa palavo. Se amoun pa yo seulement yo pale. They won't speak to you. You can try if you want to, but they won't speak to you. They only speak to their own people. So that was one category of people. So as a reminder, this is to talk about the imaginaries of NGOs and the local imagination. So one category of people is just like, well, only white people help us. And then they're like, but they don't talk to us though, right? So you have this very complex relationship happening where they don't talk to you, but at least they help. Then you have ONGs say, oh, you are an NGO, NGOs as people. One of the most surprising findings for me was that they did not every individual conceptualize a non-governmental organization as an organization at all. Some people were just like, no, an individual, a person, that's what an NGO is. And the same way that you would say like, that's a foreigner, you can say that's an NGO. So foreigner and NGO are interchangeable terms like I covered earlier. So the assumption is that because we were foreigners, they labeled us as foreigners, us researchers. So for context, we conducted interviews by foot. We went up to the mountains, we climbed, it was hot. And we had a tablet in our hands and we went door to door to whoever would like to speak to us. And then that's how we conducted our interviews. So because of that, I think because of the way that we presented with the tablet and the technology, and I was a person who, I'm a light-skinned individual, and my dress was probably more Western than I would like to admit, they immediately kind of started to identify us, at least me specifically, as a foreigner. Whereas my partner, my research partner, was a Haitian local who went to the university, a Faculté d'Ethnologie in Haiti. And who, as far as I know, had just spent more time in Haiti than I had, because I'm clearly here. So their experience of NGOs are people who, again, who are not from the area. So is it that we were white? I'm clearly not white, but they looked at me, and I'm gonna cover this a bit later, and said, you're an NGO. You are NGO, NGOs are people. So since you have come to this area, you must be coming to give something to the area. We saw you yesterday. So this is what they told us. So they are used to seeing foreigners roaming in the area, asking questions, taking notes, taking information, or even making promises. So their experience so far we've covered two imaginaries. The first one is the NGO as the white person, who may or may not talk to you, but who will help you. And the second one is the NGO as, again, a person. So you're seeing this kind of theme just pretty consistently saying, like, it's not an organization. It's people. That's how they experience NGOs. But you also have this other understanding of the NGO as an economic threat. Now, this is in relation to my initial approach of the subject with, NGO representative as being aid migrants, because, when the aid as migrants, because when they come to Haiti, they come and, quote unquote, they take the jobs, which is a very common immigrant narrative in the West. But I'm not hearing the same narrative happening in countries like Haiti. Instead, we're like, they're here to provide aid. But Haitians on the ground, and this particular person, and I think it's important to note, this particular person was an instructor. We found him in a school. So his narrative was different than that of, I would say, the everyday individual. He said, la yo vin nan peyi ya, yo vin ak tout moun yo, prop agronom yo, prop chauffeur yo, kom si pa gen Haitien ki pa ka fè travay lan, pi bien pase yo. Donc, ou ka wè ONG la, ka fè $20,000 US, men gon Haitien ki la, ki ka fè même travay lan pou mwesko. So when they come to the country, they come with all of their people, come with their agronomists and drivers. Like, there are no Haitians who would not know anything better than them. So you can see an NGO here making $20,000 US, but a Haitian here would do the same job for much less. So you have this kind of idea of a threat happening, like the NGOs are coming, they're supposedly here to help us, but we're not really seeing any progress happening. Instead, we see that they're taking all the money, right? So that's one narrative. Let's see. So nan chak $100 ki nan men ONG yo, ou met kwe 60-70 tournen kote yo soti. C'est à peine 20-25% qui dépense effectivement dans commune nan. For every $100 that the NGO has, you can believe that 60-70% goes back to the country where they come. So it is barely 20-25% that is effectively spent in the commune. So there's a certain level of awareness. Yeah, sure, you're here to provide aid, and maybe we do get the aid, but we only get about 25% of that aid, and 75% goes to the rest of the NGOs. which is again why, you know, I initially identified them as some kind of, I think, you know, as when you have north-south migrants coming to a country like Haiti, they actually do represent a threat. Whereas if you have people from the global south who go to places like the US, they do not represent an economic threat and instead contribute to the economy of countries like, let's say, UK and the US. But when the reverse happens, you're not hearing that same narrative, you're not hearing that same language. Instead, you hear, you know, Haiti received so much aid, people have gone to help. The country is still in disarray. Why is that? You know, Haiti is a cursed country. These are the narratives that you hear, but you don't hear how the majority of the aid money does not go to the people. It goes towards it goes where it goes, but not to the people. And it seems that a big chunk of where it goes is towards making sure that NGO representatives are well taken care of. And I have heard the critique. I have heard the critique from some scholars that maybe the reason that is because the NGO has a responsibility to the representative. Should then the NGO not take care of its workers? Should it not give it, you know, the money that it needs and the comfort that they need? Should people who do aid work live in the same conditions as the people that they're here to help? It's not my business to answer that question. I think that a better approach would be to budget more appropriately and to invest where the money needs to be invested in. I'm not saying that, you know, NGO representatives should not experience comfort, but if that comfort comes at the price of, you know, the individuals on the ground not receiving aid, then there's an issue here. Yeah. So you have NGOs as a generalized threat. So group moun ki met tèt ansam pou yo chache moyen pou yo bay peuple en minimum, pou yo pran en maximum. So here, the person is not even necessarily talking about money. It says a group of people who work together to find a way to give the people the minimum to the people so that they themselves can take the maximum. The second person says moun kap sou CPA, people who are sucking the country dry, bagay ki pa bon pou paye, something that isn't good for the country. Se moun ki te nan organizasyon ki te kon jwen benefis, an pil bagay se nou mem ki fel. The people who are part of organizations are the ones who receive benefits. We are the ones who have taken care of most of our issues. So what you're really seeing here is the people are communicating a certain frustration because they're witnessing and noticing that the people who really are benefiting are the people who are part of the organization. And the reality is the Haitians on the ground are the ones taking care of themselves within their capacities, within their means. They have, and that's another thing I noticed, that they have begun to organize in a way that allows them to take care of themselves without any kind of dependency towards the state, or, well, they can't depend on the state for reasons I will be covering later, or because they can't rely on NGOs. Let's see. So another category is NGOs are not trustworthy. They can't trust them. Le moun yo vini, yo pronon, yo ale, ou ba jamwa yo. Yo dou ceci, yo dou cela, moun sa yo fem sentim pa ka bayan ken konfians anko. Yo gen do avoye kob pou nou gen do pa touche yo pran yo ekril, yo gen do pran informasyon, jetel, mpa ganyen let pou mpa lavo, yo pronon, yo pa bon. When the people come, they take your name and they leave and you never see them again. They tell you this and that. These people make me feel like I can't give my trust again. They may be sending money to us and we might not have access to it. They take the money. They might come and take our information and then throw it away. I have nothing bad to speak about with you. They take your name, but they don't give you anything. When je sais belle parole seulement yo genyen, li tan nou de kayou, li pran, li pale, li bon 2 kalot encore, li pa di, li pran, li vire l do lale. NGOs only have beautiful words. They wait for you behind your house and take. If you speak out, they give you 2 hits and then turn their back and leave. So now you have this kind of they're implying, I think this is what you call implying violence without specifically being vocal about said violence. As a reminder that they think that we were NGOs ourselves. And I think that might have influenced the way that they answered or responded to or the questionnaire. So you can see that he is very wary. He is not he is not he is not enthusiastic about being critical, and just emphasizes the fact, like, I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to be out of line, but they don't follow through. Essentially, NGOs, as although here it doesn't specify whether they see NGOs as a person or organization, but they definitely see NGO, whether it be organization or people, as untrustworthy and as a group that does not follow through on their word. And instead, who just comes and collects data, which might explain why they thought that we were NGO representatives, because what we were doing is indeed collecting data. So because of that, they see NGOs as being very inefficient. So they're like, I've heard so much about how much food they were sending after the hurricane. I've never tasted it. It's another person who gave me a part of their aid. This area, we never receive anything. All day, all you hear are people arguing. They never do anything over here. You could try to do something around here, but they are unbearable. So what you see here is, again, on the news and from the Western perspective, people are sending aid to Haiti, they're sending help, and we're not seeing any change on the ground. But when you go and you speak to the people and you have a conversation with them, they too are like, what's happening? I don't understand. Where is the money? I don't understand how come no progress has been made. So we're actually on the same page. And the only person we're not really like looking at is the NGOs. What are you doing here? Because, again, they hear about the aid, but they don't see the aid. And that's might help explain why they're so insistent that, NGOs can still stay, because in their experience, they can't necessarily rely on the state either. So the way they look at it is, well, the state's not doing anything, and the NGOs come from where they come from to provide aid, so they might as well stay. So their receptivity to NGOs and NGOs is not necessarily a receptivity to NGOs as much as it is just a disillusionment that the state can do anything for them. Now, the question that I have at this point is, would they still be receptive to NGOs if the state had the capacity to stand on its own? But literature on NGO studies will also show you that the presence of NGOs in Haiti has led to I guess, a disinvestment or a lack of an investment into the infrastructure of the country, and has led to a dependency on foreign aid, which is why a lot of people are like, no, we don't need your aid. We need to actually grow on our own. And there's this other category, which I think was probably the most surprising category for me, which was the NGO as God sent. And the reason they see NGOs as God sent is because I think it has more to do with the history of missionary work in Haiti, which again is, I think, an aspect of colonization. So they say, bon Dieu voye nou pou nou vin nan zon lan, pou nou vin pala avek mwen. God sent you to come to the area so that you can talk to me, or to talk to them. So the question to me was, okay, so with all of these layers of understanding, do they trust NGOs? And I attempted to conduct a linear regression analysis, and I could not really establish any kind of real relationship. So I went back to the data, and I just did simple statistics, and that revealed more to me. And I also looked at my ethnographic notes. As it would turn out, my ethnographic notes would reveal more than the survey did, and I think that has again to do with the fact that they thought we were NGO representatives, so they were afraid of naming or saying anything out of line. At least that is my assumption. So when we asked them, do you trust local authorities? Do you trust, the state? Do you trust NGOs? there was a pretty common theme. And the theme was, moi pas faire confier sous l'homme là, à Jésus seulement. I do not trust the human being. I am only with Jesus. And beyond specifically talking about not trusting people, some added another caveat saying that if you do trust people, you should only trust Christians. Ou faire moun qui chrétien confiance, c'est pas n'importe qui moun vous faire confiance, c'est bon Dieu pour faire confiance. You should only trust Christians. You shouldn't trust just anyone. You should trust God. So in continuation of my reflection of, okay, so where is this trust coming from? Why do you trust them after you told me all of these things? You've told me they were an economic threat. You've told me that, you know, they don't do the work. You've told me that, you know, they stay away from you, they don't talk to you. But when I tell you, should they stay, you say absolutely. But when I tell you, do you trust them? You say no. So I looked, I wondered, maybe it has to do with the relationship with the state. So we asked them, what is the state? And overwhelmingly, 44 said, there is no state. Although the state is order, there is no state. And 2 said, the state is God. And again, in the same format that we asked them, you know, what is the NGO? We asked them 3 times. And again, the questions kind of evolved. You have consistency, you see God, the state is God, but you see the appearance of a new category, you see white people, although only 1 person said white people. I do think it's worth of noting, especially because, again, the way that Haitians have experienced authority is, again, rooted in a colonial legacy of slavery, where white people were in charge. But they also say that the state is aid. But overwhelmingly, you see that they're like, there is no state. We don't have a state. And that's where I came up. Okay, so somewhere between the state and God, somewhere between their relationship with the state and God is where we can find an explanation for their attitude towards NGOs and NGO representatives. They said, the moun pa ka fè l'État confiance, mais anvan l'État, c'est bon Dieu. C'est en lè net pour mette bon Dieu, mais tête l'autre moun. Mais là, yo l'État, mais ouais, mais là, l'État voye moun là, c'est moun là qui met là. C'est pas ça? People cannot trust the state, but before the state comes God. We must put God above all else, even above other people. But when the state sends people here, they are the ones who are in charge. So they have a hierarchy of understanding of authority and power. And so from their understanding, you have God is right here, and you have the state right here. And if the state isn't here, then you only trust God. And if you now see the appearance of NGOs, it's almost kind of like they kind of framed it, at least that is my hypothesis, that the presence of NGOs is God-given. As kind of noticed earlier, they made statements such as, God has sent you to speak to me because the state is not here. So it's almost as if they're like, okay, well, the state is not here, but because God is all loving, he is making sure that we still have access to what we need by sending NGOs our way. And also, again, because of the history of missionary work that exists in Haiti. So they're also accustomed to seeing missionaries. It's just that it went from missionaries to NGO. It's always the same thing, groups of people from you know, whatever country they come from, coming to Haiti to provide aid. So you're either an NGO or a missionary, either way you're a foreigner. So you have that relationship with God that seems to be permeating their understanding of NGOs and of the state. So they say, 1 person said, c'est l'État qui papam, c'est li qui mamam, mwen pa ka rail, apre mon Dieu, c'est l'État. You see that same kind of theme coming up. After God comes the state. The state is my father, the state is my mother. I cannot hate the state. After God comes the state. So what? The attitudes that locals have towards NGOs seem more rooted in the relationship that they had with the state and with each other than it was rooted in the capacity or incapacity of NGOs to perform well in Haiti, including in our analysis, the relationship with the home countries, state might help us gain a better understanding of the attitudes individuals have towards not only foreigners, but also immigrants in general. So what my research is doing is just like, if you want to look at the attitude that locals have towards foreigners, consider first the attitude that the locals have with the state, with the government. And in the case of Haiti, the relationship that they have with religion and God. That was a very, very surprising finding. I was not expecting to find that. I was not expecting religion to play such a big role in how they rationalize even the presence of NGOs in Haiti. But I find that, beyond that, my research remedies this homogenization of what is the colonial experience. It's not every single individual living in the post-colony does not experience NGOs the same way. Every social class does not experience NGOs the same way. So my research, remedies that and proposes a perspective where women and men hold different views, and where the respondents shape their answers based not necessarily on their personal opinions, but on how they also perceive the person conducting the interviews. So who knows what the responses would have been if, let's say, I was somebody who was actively involved in community organizing in Port-Salut. But instead I was a foreigner as far as they could perceive. So and because of that, their answers were what they were. And I think that's so important for anthropological and sociological research. So my research thus positions the subaltern as a subject and not as the object of research, as an active participant who assessed the social stature of the researcher to decide how to participate in the study. This choice to position themselves in such a way is not a testament to lack of integrity. And I do want to say it's not because they're liars, it's not from lack of integrity, but more of a desire to guarantee that their needs are met, and more importantly, to ensure their safety in a state where historically they have experienced enormous repercussions for speaking up. So the concept of essentialism, which is the idea that every individual thinks the same, frames the colonial as always investigating and studying the subaltern. I provide a shift where the subaltern is the one providing its own understanding and analysis of the representative of the imperial nation, which is the non-governmental organization. So that concludes my presentation. I know we're at time, and I do want to open up the floor for thoughts, comments, or questions, or feedback, or anything really. So thank you so much.
Wow, thank you very much for this detailed and insightful research project. Would you mind there you go. Yeah, we have a few moments for some questions. Please do just unmute yourself if you can. Show yourself as a video. It's nice for presenters to see people's faces as they ask questions, or just type in the chat if you feel comfortable doing that. But please do feel comfortable.
Oh no.
Christine, did you want to ask?
Actually, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed your presentation. And one of the questions I had at the start was, how were you perceived? And then you answered that question. Mm-hmm. So that was great. I was thinking, and I mean, that's probably another research project, but because you focused on the perspectives of local people, how maybe people who work in national or local NGOs perceive a lot of the questions that you have. Mm-hmm. And I was also thinking, and I don't know if you can speak to that, because you said it's so problematic to track NGOs, if local or national NGOs are connected with international NGOs, probably, or
I do think that's something that I should at least like include in there. I think it would help us understand how they're moving, how they're networking amongst each other, how they're deciding how to approach locals when it's time to implement work. But that's a good question. Like, how are they interacting, and what is the distinction even between how an international non-governmental organization operates versus a local one? And, you know, even how does not a local one, how a non-governmental organization, INGO versus an NGO. Yeah, yeah. It was great and very long. Thank you. I thought it would be more welcoming for the work they do, but it was great insight to learn. Okay, thank you. I think Jamie, did I answer your question, Christine? Did you want more? No.
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, it's something that probably requires then research. And I mean, it's also complicated, right? How do they work, not just with, but maybe through, do some international use, possibly NGOs in Haiti that I don't know, registered in Haiti. I don't even know. That's, you know.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. Okay, this is where I was. You're where I was.
so no, it's like, no, because you show how messy it is, or how complex, how messy it is, right? And it is, and I really appreciated also how you pointed out how local people perceive NGOs and how they do it, even, you know, with white people, even if the people are not necessarily white in North American terms, let's say, or you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Jimmy has a hand up. Yep. Hello.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Sorry, I came in a little late though, but one of the things that struck me was when some of the replies that said, "Oh, they come and they say beautiful words." I'm at the Haitian Project. We have a school outside, a secondary school outside Port-au-Prince, and it contrasts with. It could also go both ways, where my colleagues in Haiti can also, it's easy for them to say what they think, you know, I want to hear, or what my other, you know, Blanc colleagues want to hear. And we always have to be careful to really ask a lot of people, and ask a lot of times too, you know, to repeat ourselves, to really, you know, drill down and get what they really want to say, and instead of just accepting the first answer we get, because a lot of times, you know, the beautiful words will come right back at us and not really mean anything.
I understand that. So just needing to be more transparent and just kind of like making space to revisit the conversation around needs. I could actually agree to that. I think that there's a certain type of shyness or even being afraid to speak up that has more to do, again, with the history of Haiti, but also like kind of this kind of culture of like not questioning authority. But that's something I think that I would need to look a little bit more deeply into, especially because Haiti also has a history of protest, of speaking up. But at the same time, it's almost like there's a spectrum of like, there are people who speak up and there are people who say nothing. And that's also can be gendered. And that's an analysis I would like to maybe like dive a little bit more into. But again, in parentheses, we met a lot, and by a lot, no, we met 2 women organizers who were very active in the community and taking action. So it's not, even the gendered aspect is complex. So yeah. Is there any other question for me?
I may have 1,000 questions, as I always do. We have a time to talk about this later. But just for the group, you know, how was it? You know, the being labeled as a Blanc. And how did that shape what people are telling you? How did that shape what you're observing, and how did it shape your understanding of this question?
Well, I'd like to first say that my feelings were hurt. One, okay, one, because I was born and raised in Haiti. I did not self-identify as a foreigner when I got there, and it had been a long time since I'd been back in Haiti. But I still had my Haitian passport at the time. I was still holding on to my, nationality very, very strongly. And but in that interaction, it really occurred to me that I had become Haitian American. I was no longer purely Haitian, just because I might be purely Haitian by blood, and even that might be questionable, but I was Haitian by upbringing. However, upon interacting with individuals, there's this one story that, it really just stuck with me, and I'm gonna share it. We were in the area, it was a very, very remote area, and then we just appeared and they started to speak to me in mock English. And by mock English, I mean, like, they just started to say ching chong ching, like American, like, I don't even know how to specifically do. It's kind of like what
It's a
English
brang,
sounds
brang,
like.
brang, 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 brang.
Yeah, it's like how English sounds like when you don't speak English. So that's kind of how they started to talk to me. And I was just like, I'm Haitian. And then they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm Haitian. And then they're like, no way. And even though I assured them that I was Haitian, I proceeded to speak in Haitian Creole to them, they still were like, where's the money? Where's the American dollar? So it was definitely interesting for me to experience that, especially because once upon a time I was the one speaking mock English to some white presenting individuals, and now I was on the receiving end of that, as life goes. And it really just made me pause and think about, what exactly does it mean to be Haitian? What is foreignness? Is national identity, or even a passport, all you need to be, to be identified as Haitian or as whatever nationality? So it really gave me insight about hybridity, which is the concept that is present in post-colonial theory, and the idea that a lot of times individuals who come from a colonial space often have to embody multiple identities and multiple cultures in order, that's just kind of a part of our evolution and a part of our survival. But when you go back home and you're now a diaspora, the attitudes change. You have this kind of in-group, out-group thing happening, where you are no longer privy to certain conversations that you would have been able to be a part of, but because of your proximity to the Western world and even your fluidity in talking about the West and speaking English, all of these are markers of foreignness that signify to locals that you are no longer purely Haitian. And because of that, you no longer purely understand their experience. And even though that was hurtful, I recognize that that was true. I no longer know what it's like to be in Haiti, especially now. That is not an experience that I have, and I had to make space for that. Yes, Christine. Yeah.
I might have missed that, so I apologize if I did. You mentioned you had a research partner who was Haitian.
Yeah.
Was he perceived as Haitian, or was he also perceived as white by some, so to speak?
So she was a woman. So she,
Sorry,
now it's different because she had already come to the area to conduct research in the previous year. So they were already familiar with her. Now she was not perceived as white, but she was perceived as foreigner. Yeah. And by foreigner, and I think it's important distinction, there's foreign to Port-Salut, and then there's foreign to Haiti. They recognize that she was foreign to Port-Salut. Also because, probably because of the way she dressed, the way that she behaved, she had probably markers of what you would call the urban versus the foreign. So she was still, and again, I think there's just the logistics of, it's a small area, everybody knows everyone. So if you have somebody, you know, you just never seen them, obviously, you know, they're not from here. But with me, it was like, no, you're not from here. You're not from Haiti. I'm like, no, I am. So yeah, but I also, you know, and to point out that, you know, whiteness is not exclusively a skin color thing. Like if you do well financially, you often hear just teasing people would be like, hey, blah, what minute, or just like, hey, this white person, you're like, you're doing well, you know, you've ascended to whiteness because you've accrued capital. So yeah, to a certain extent, right? Yeah, not full whiteness, but that's what I have for you.
Sorry, I know I missed this, but what year did you conduct the research?
2019. It's been a while now, but yeah. I have to say, I was definitely curious to see how it would be interesting to go back and do the same research now, and to also be a lot more careful with the questions, and to just like specific and have questions that specifically target interaction with NGOs and NGOs, if you know they felt comfortable enough to answer. But I also know that I wouldn't personally conduct that interview, especially because I would rather it be conducted by somebody who is involved in community organizing on the ground. I think that would be the most efficient way to find, you know, the true, not true answer, but the most unafraid answers. Yeah, unafraid. Yeah, I think there's fear. I think a lot of fear was got caution. I would not fear, caution guided how they answered the questions. It's a lot to think about.
So if there are a couple other folks want to ask a few questions or so, giving folks an opportunity who haven't had a chance to raise their hand to ask a question to do so. If not, I wanted to ask policy implications for your research.
Oh my God, policy implications for my
How would
research.
how does this help us think, you know, how to do NGOs better, you know?
I do think there's a certain level of cultural training that should be implemented and probably done on the ground. Like I don't think that should be something that's remote. I think like first week of like NGOs being here, assuming that you do take NGOs like individuals from other countries to do the work. And I think it's also essential that they're fluent to a certain extent in the language. And I also think that like I think cultural training is important because a lot of times we don't recognize how we have some internalized racial beliefs. We all have internalized racial beliefs. Black people have them, white people have them, because we're all socialized in a racial world. So just having that implemented and just really, I think the vetting process should be more strict on who gets to work for a non-governmental organization, because we're looking at highly vulnerable populations of individuals who likely don't speak English or the language of the person who is here to help. So policy implementations look like also cultural training, linguistic compatibility, and the third thing I would say is just like a budgeting transparency on budgeting, and maybe also communicating to the people who are going to be doing the work what their living conditions are going to be. I think it almost feels insulting to the people receiving aid when the person who is giving them aid is living luxuriously while they are suffering. So maybe have people who are transparency with the people who, transparency to the people that their living conditions are not going to be that of the West. Like, you're not, you're just not here on vacation. And if you need a break, maybe schedule that, or just, I don't know, even the way that you approach or you enter the community. I think it's better to enter by foot instead of by car, or motorcycle is okay, but definitely not by car. Because then the distance is just too big, because you have the factor of feeling intimidated, and you really have to meet people where they are. And I think that's when they're the most receptive and most open. And yeah, and also probably like a person who has a true love for the Haitian culture and food. Yeah.
I wanted to, before folks are all leaving, wanted to thank you once again for taking the time. I know how hard you worked, not only in Port-Salut, but in your dissertation. And I wanted to say I'm excited for what's coming next. And I do hope you do consider publishing this as a book. So I will, Jaden, thank you for that. I'm going to say to email me, and I will give that to you. Sorry. But yeah, before everyone scatters, I wanted to thank you. And then I'm going to turn off the recording of people that want to chat with you, and you can give your contact information so that people can reach out to you. That would be fantastic. So, wanted to make sure that we all truly thank you for this work, and thank you for your time, and thank everyone for coming today. This is a important topic that's underappreciated and understood, if that's a word. So thank you. I'm going to shut the recording off, but do feel free to chat with Stephanie. And yeah, thank you all.